The fire was in the bottle. But the real heat, the kind that consumes, is in the waiting. Victor traded 17 years of marriage for 1 minute of pleasure, and in return, I took his soul. He is still here, walking around the house, but he is no longer a man. He is the shadow of his own lie, imprisoned by my gaze. He is looking for a way out, but I have the key. There is a price to pay for betrayal, and I make sure he pays it every night, in silence. Subscribe. The drama of this revenge is more terrifying than the crime itself. My name is Sophie. My marriage after 17 years had become a structure of habit, solid in appearance but hollow inside. My husband, Victor, was a brilliant, structured businessman who liked his life, like his files, to be impeccably organized. I thought this rigor extended to his heart. I was wrong. The discovery was not the glare of a hotel bill or an ambiguous text message. It was more insidious, more material, and in a way, more humiliating. That day, I had resolved to clean the inside of his car, a large, dark sedan he treated like his second office. The air was always stale with new leather and the scent of work. It was there, under the passenger seat, a place he never would have thought I would search, that an object slipped out. Not an old toll ticket, not a pen. A small, new bottle of lubricant, discreetly packaged, but clearly identifiable. The shock was not a wave of tears. It was the equivalent of a circuit breaker tripping. The noise of betrayal had slammed shut, but strangely, the light had turned back on, revealing a cold lucidity. This bottle was physical, intimate proof, the raw symbol of a pleasure not meant for me. Its presence, in the car we used to drive the children and plan vacations, was a violation. I was, at that moment, not only the victim of infidelity, but the object of the deepest humiliation. I didn't have the instinct of the miser discovering his empty safe, shouting, "Thief! Murderer!" for his fortune. I felt the loss of something infinitely more precious, the loss of my marital reality. My sorrow immediately transformed into a cold anger, a suppressed rage that sought not explosion but strategy. I didn't want him to disappear from my life with a simple breakup. I didn't want to leave him the option of cutting off all contact once the divorce was finalized. I had to ensure he suffered as much as I did, that he bore the pain of betrayal not on his soul, an invisible thing, but on his own body and status. Non-lethal retribution would be my course of action. I had to become the master planner of a new scheme, one where justice would not be pronounced by a court, but executed by me. I plunged into a clinical analysis of our life, searching for the flaw in his system. The point of leverage. Victor worshipped his image, his control, his performance. Reaching him through his body in the very act of his transgression, and then through his professional status, was the most effective path to total psychological destruction. This approach required patience, precision, and a total absence of visible emotion. I was now an operative, my heart a tool of precision. I spent 2 days in silence, observing. Victor was agitated, nervous, unsure if I knew. His nervousness increased my emotional leverage. Meanwhile, I planned. The initial chemical vengeance, murder, had been ruled out. I didn't want to be an executioner in the criminal sense. I wanted to be a lucid executioner, an active agent of justice through humiliation. My plan had to target the very vector of his pleasure without causing permanent damage. There had to be temporary sensory distress that would leave him humiliated and confused without me being physically present or legally chargeable. I studied the bottle's composition. A water-based lubricant. I ruled out irritating essential oils like maritime pine or bay laurel, which were too dermocaustic and unpredictable, violating my non-lethality constraint. I rejected the idea of desensitizers like benzocaine, too complex to dose effectively to induce failure without risk. My choice settled on capsaicin, the active molecule in chili peppers. It is a TRPV1 receptor agonist, meaning it doesn't actually cause a burn, but stimulates nociceptors, pain receptors, to give the sensation of intense heat, like a superficial first-degree burn, without lasting tissue damage at low doses. It was the perfect weapon. Psychologically devastating, clinically benign. The idea of the sudden heat, the alarm signal sent directly to his brain in the midst of his guilty euphoria, was strategically beautiful. I ordered pure chili oleoresin. I ran tests on inert materials to ensure the dilution was perfect, strong enough to induce sensory panic, but weak enough to leave no visible trace of lasting injury. The preparation was surgical. I took a small quantity of the original lubricant and introduced an infinitesimal dose of capsaicin, just enough to cause a sensory alarm and temporary erythema upon contact with mucous membranes. I then sealed the original bottle, taking care to mask any trace of manipulation. The act itself was coldly satisfying. I was transforming the symbol of his betrayal into the instrument of his retribution. The lubricant was no longer a shameful piece of trash. It was a sophisticated trap. I placed the bottle back under the passenger seat, slightly more visible this time, like an invitation. The anticipation of the trap had become the best part of the execution. The wait was short. One Thursday evening, he told me he was working late, one of his urgent trips. He came back after midnight. I wasn't sleeping, but I pretended to be. I heard every sound, every step. I heard the front door close too quietly, the sound of his briefcase hitting the floor. And then, the thing I was waiting for. The hasty opening and closing of the bathroom door. Then, the sound of water. First a trickle, then a continuous flow. He never used that. Much water. It was a rinse of pure panic. I held my breath. The capsaicin had struck. The alarm, the burning sensation, the localized panic had hit him mid-act. The victim of infidelity was no longer me. It was him, humiliated in the very arena of his transgression. The fact that he had to rush to our shared, now violated bathroom amplified the symbolism of his distress. When he emerged, he was unrecognizable. There was no visible injury, no blister, just a devastated, pale, and confused man. The effect was twofold, not just the burn, but the sexual failure induced by the intense psychological pressure. 80% of failures have a psychological origin, exacerbated by stress. The sudden burn was merely the final blow to his dialogue between the penis and the brain. He collapsed into bed, back turned, body rigid. I felt his anguish. He couldn't talk to me about it. He couldn't talk to his mistress about it. He had to be wondering what was wrong with his body, if he had an infection, an allergy, or a sudden illness. My crime was perfect. It forced him into social isolation in the face of his own panic. He was alone with his pain and his secret. The same isolation I had felt in the face of his betrayal. The symmetry was exquisite. He couldn't go to the hospital without admitting to using the product, and he couldn't tell me without admitting to the lie. He was trapped by his own guilt. The next day, the real work began. The physical sabotage was just a prelude. The real vengeance would be psychological and professional. I got up, smiling. I observed him. He wore loose clothes, moving stiffly. "Victor, you look stressed. A new allergy?" "No, a bad night." An old sweater was scratching me. I nodded without pressing. Humiliation must be implied. "By the way, I found a stain on the passenger seat yesterday. A greasy one. I did my best to clean it, but I hope it wasn't engine oil. You know, some products, if they aren't washed immediately, never come out. His gaze froze. Terror rose. He understood I had found the bottle. He understood I knew, but he couldn't possibly understand what I had done. He couldn't link my discovery to his sensory distress. This uncertainty was my fortress. That's where I took on my role as judge. I used the bottle not as evidence for divorce. I wanted to destroy him more slowly, but as a tool of constant pressure. I'm not ready for divorce yet, Victor. The truth is, I'm not ready to let you rebuild easily. On the other hand, I think it's time to talk about our financial arrangement. You have a career, you have a reputation. Those are fragile things. I could, for example, resolve to share the evidence of your double life with a few of your associates, just so they understand the kind of man you are. His face crumbled. The private humiliation had expanded into public risk. Financial worry and loss of social status are classic consequences of exposure, and he understood that I was ready to cross that threshold. The lubricant was now a lever of blackmail on his professional identity. I had touched him in the depths of his intimacy, and now I was threatening him at the height of his status. "You wouldn't do that," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You bet on my pain, Victor. You bet I would be a simple victim, ashamed and silent. You lost. Now I am the keeper of your secret. Every failure in your life, every breakdown, every doubt you have in intimacy will be my silent victory." I stayed. I demanded total control of our finances, the management of his personal investments, and a disproportionate share of the income, all while maintaining the appearance of a united family. He yielded at every point. He couldn't afford the scandal. He couldn't risk a new failure, a new burn whose origin he didn't know, all while fighting a financial war against me. This was the ultimate form of my revenge. I stayed to watch him doubt his body, doubt his mistress, doubt his luck. I stayed to ensure he still thought of me, and that my existence was the constant threat hanging over his career. I am no longer his loving wife. I am the slow poison that ensures his psychological humiliation is durable. The lubricant, that small, innocuous bottle, has become the symbol of my total power over him. Victor is not dead, but the man I had loved, and the man he had become, were both slowly consuming themselves. And I was there to watch him burn in his failure and his fear. Subscribe. This is the definitive proof that control is the deadliest weapon.